It is indeed a pleasure to be able to review this compelling collection of essays on stabilizing economies, business cycle, entrepreneurship, and sustainability, edited by the Vice Chancellor, Senior Professor H.D.Karunaratne. Embarking on and successfully completing this massive task is a fitting reflection on Professor Karunaratne's 34-year-long career at the University of Colombo and demonstrates his vast experience as a skilled academic and administrator, as well as his unwavering commitment to promoting research and ideas of national importance. As you are aware, the Sri Lankan economy faced its worst economic crisis in 2022, and it is no secret that policy missteps that amplified the long-standing structural vulnerabilities were behind the crisis. A series of immediate policy corrections backed by the extended fund facility program of the International Monetary Fund and the support of international community was necessary to stabilize the economy. As a result, by now, the disinflation process has been completed, fiscal position has strengthened, official reserves have improved, the exchange rate has stabilized, the debt restructuring process is nearing completion, and there are early signs of near-term high economic growth. However, it is clear to all of us as academics and policymakers that for Sri Lanka to sustain economic growth in an inclusive, dynamic, efficient and sustainable manner, the country needs to adopt a new growth model without disrupting hard-earned stability that we see today. Only then there will truly be economic stability in the short term and in the longer term. It is in this context the contents of Professor Karunaratne's compilation must be read. The compilation comprises 3 parts. First, focusing on the business cycle and long-term growth. Second, on entrepreneurship development. And the third, focusing on sustainable development. I speed read through the 20 chapters written by the 36 authors. I enjoyed reading many of them. For today's purpose, with the limited time I have, let me very briefly concentrate on a few of them. Let me start from chapter 1, the introduction. In this introductory chapter, Professor Karunaratne notes the importance of collecting and reviewing outcomes of cutting-edge research on business cycle behavior, phases of the business cycle, and its implications on economic activity, factors influencing long-run growth behavior, and the role of policymakers in stabilizing production in the short run and designing policies to achieve long-term development objectives of the country. He also explains the inextricable link between business cycle, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. With appropriate examples, Professor Karunaratne explains the business cycles and entrepreneurship are connected in terms of risk tolerance, innovation, and job creation. He then shows the links between business cycles and sustainability through the nexus between growth, sustainability, and resilience. While Professor Karunaratne has aptly summarized all articles in his introductory chapter, I would have liked it to specify how each of the chapters fits into place like neat building blocks in the overall discourse of stabilizing economies. Part 2 of the compilation contains 5 essays, that is chapters 2 to 6. In chapter 2, Professor Priyanka Dunusinghe uses the World Bank growth model to generate long-term growth scenarios for Sri Lanka. The scenarios are eye-opening. Comparing growth experiences of various other countries, Professor Dunusinghe shows how Sri Lanka will be stuck in the middle income trap for a long period of time unless growth-enhancing reforms are implemented urgently. According to him, and I believe we all agree, that only increasing factors of production would not result in sustained long-term growth. Improving female labor force participation and foreign direct investment would help boost growth to some extent. However, productivity and human capital development are critical to sustain a high growth rate over a long period of time. The authors of Chapter 3 use a real business cycle model to analyze the impact of fiscal policy in Sri Lanka. The broad conclusion is that the size of the government is relatively small in Sri Lanka, and fiscal policy's impact on the Sri Lankan economy is minimal, with an extremely low fiscal multiplier of 0.0016. I would have considered the size of the fiscal deficit to compare the size of the government rather than consumption expenditure, as Sri Lanka's inherently low government revenues necessitated sizable financing, thus resulting in a larger government and high debt levels. It would also have been interesting to consider the government's capital investments, as well as the government's role as the largest employer of the country and the spillover effects of government actions on private sector activity. One should not ignore the possibility of value destructions during the time of the internal conflict within the time period covered in the study. Chapter 6 attempts to gauge the nexus between economic growth and energy consumption in G20 nations for the period from 1991 to 2015, adopting panel regression methods. Like in many other papers in the compilation, the methodology used is very well explained, and the conclusion of the authors is that there is no clear-cut relationship between fossil fuel consumption and economic growth. As the authors state, the results are striking, and the study can aid in the development of strategies by policymakers to increase utilization of renewable energy sources. Moving on to part 2, which presents a multidimensional perspective of entrepreneurship development in chapters 7 to 13. Let me concentrate on chapters 7 and 10. I found chapter 7, titled Entrepreneurship and Financial Literacy, a winning combination, to be a motivational speech for budding entrepreneurs. Written in a very simple language, this chapter provides advice and motivates entrepreneurs, highlighting the importance of financial literacy in running a business. Throughout the chapter, the author remains positive and reiterates that despite many challenges, building a successful enterprise can be rewarding personally and also as a nation. The chapter also briefly touches upon the empowering aspect of financial literacy on women entrepreneurs, as well as the opportunities and challenges of digitalization. In chapter 10, written by Professor Rukmal Veerasinghe, I found a very comprehensive literature review on the role of the government in promoting innovation and entrepreneurship, organized in a way that could be quite useful for the government in its efforts to promote innovation and entrepreneurship. The role of the government in the innovation ecosystem as well as in the entrepreneurial ecosystem is summarized and then compared against one another. While I doubt that the government is currently in a position to play its role as funder and investor in these ecosystems, its role as a policymaker and strategist, regulator, coordinator and facilitator, consumer and demonstrator, catalyst, knowledge creator and diffuser, and supporter of education and skill development cannot be undermined. Part 3 on sustainable development comprises chapters 14 to 20, and let me focus on chapters 15 and 19. Chapter 15 provides a case study on the Chinese city of Shenzhen in discussing the need for a multi-stakeholder collaborated environmental, social and governance ESG ecosystem. The authors, noting the obstacles encountering ESG practices in recent years, delve into various collaboration models to explore what model suits the future trajectory of the city of Shenzhen. Backed by research, the authors also make customized suggestions to promote the high-quality development of building ESG ecosystems. Needless to say, this chapter has extremely useful policy lessons for countries like Sri Lanka, which are at initial stages of developing ESG ecosystems. In chapter 19, the authors discuss technological applications and humanistic care in the logistical industry in the intelligence era. As Sri Lanka recognizes the logistics industry as low-hanging fruit in its growth efforts, the Chinese experience in adopting latest technologies in this sector would be of immense use to those who are interested in technological developments as well as the logistics industry and supply chain management. In particular, the authors, through a thorough literature review, show that artificial intelligence, automation and big data are replacing traditional industrial pattern by a new pattern of human-machine symbiosis. Technology is rapidly evolving, and global competition is high in these aspects, as the authors show through examples. Authors conclude the chapter by highlighting the challenges and opportunities arising from the new pattern of human-machine symbiosis and encourage skills enhancement as a way for new generations to embrace opportunities arising from these developments. My review will not be complete if I do not mention a few weaknesses of the compilation. On the chapters, I found some to be quite lengthy. Understandably, there was variation from very technical to non-technical, covering macro as well as micro aspects of economic dynamics. Some articles contained a tedious number of tables and graphs. References of some articles were incomplete, and some contained occasional typos. When the compilation is taken as a whole, it could have been better if all authors followed the guidance given on the length of the article and on charts and tables, so that there could have been some consistency between the chapters. In any case, I believe this would go through a closer edit during the next edition. It would also have been extremely useful if Professor Karunaratne, perhaps expanding on the latest para of the introductory chapter, had a final say in a brief concluding chapter, distilling the useful arguments that the chapters make and setting stage for the next round of dialogue. I would like to emphasize here that these minor shortcomings should not in any way undermine the valuable contribution that the compilation is seeking to make. With that, let me conclude by congratulating Professor Karunaratne on a job well done, and congratulating all authors on a fantastic team effort that hopefully will ignite a broader discussion and debate on important aspects of Sri Lanka's future growth and development trajectory that they are seeking to highlight. I look forward to reading this compilation in full over the next few weeks along with you. Thank you.